many times entrepreneurs are hesitant or even afraid to share bad news.
Yeah, because things can go south.
And in most cases, there's usually a way to figure out a path forward. The important thing is that you communicate.
Because both cost you time and money. Yeah. And startups don't have a lot of money, to throw around.
You don't go down this road unless you have a strong belief that you're capable of doing extraordinary things. It's necessary.
Chris, hello. Welcome back to our show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
You were our first guest here at this show. The first time we filmed over Zoom, but this time we're in person.
That's right, live here in Zagreb. It's nice to be here.
All right, so what are you doing in Europe?
Well, lots of things actually. Partly it's a vacation. My wife's birthday was this last Saturday, so we spent some time in Paris, and we enjoyed that. And I figured since we had come all this way from Florida, we may as well just go a little further, come to Croatia, meet the team here, and get to spend some time with you here at Decode.
What's the biggest difference that you notice when you come, from the States to Europe? It's probably smaller cars, and narrow roads.
It's smaller cars, faster drivers, for sure. One of the things we enjoy about coming to Europe is just to get the experience, the different, cultures, the food particularly has been enjoyable. Your people here have taken us out a couple of times since we've been in the city, and it's just been wonderful. Yeah.
I hope the food was good.
The food was exceptionally good. The hospitality, everyone's been friendly. This is a wonderful place. So you guys are very lucky to be here.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so in our first episode, we talked about angel investing in terms of, what angel investors are looking for when they're investing. We went through, certain criteria, managing the budget, marketing, and, just having a business plan. We talked about how it's important to have a business plan and many other things. This time we're going to talk about what happens after you've made an investment after an angel investor, has decided to invest in a company that's promising.
Yeah, it's really the investment is really just the beginning of the relationship. Good investors bring more than just money. They bring their knowledge and their experience that they can help the companies, overcome obstacles and better plan. They bring their network of other people with experience and capabilities that can help, as well as can help set up for the next round of funding through their connections as well. Good entrepreneurs, good CEOs learn to keep their investors involved and informed as to what's going on with the companies so that they can help them get to the next stage.
One of the things when I was doing the prep came to my mind. Getting an investment is pretty difficult. This might be a harsh comparison, but it might be the same as, elections. Politicians, present themselves as best as they can, but sometimes, they win the elections, and then what, And it is a bit harsh comparison, but it might be the same case here.
Yeah, obviously, what we want to have happen is the story we were told, the plans that were put in place, the markets that are going to be addressed, the products and services that are going to be created. We want to see those things happen based on what we were quote unquote sold. In other words, this is what the company we were told was intended to do. We want to see those things happen. One of the worst things an entrepreneur, a company can do is after raising a round of money is significantly change their plans and do something else. That, is in the U.S. we call a bait and switch, right? I sell you one thing, but I deliver another. You don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you follow the plans that you've put together and stay on the road, unless there's a good reason to change. And we can talk about that on another day, perhaps. But that's important. You want to stick to your plans. The other thing that you want to do from the perspective of the entrepreneur is do keep your investors informed as to what's going on. One of the most difficult things is bad news. Many times entrepreneurs are hesitant or even afraid to share bad news. From our perspective, from the perspective of the investor, we know that the company and the people working there are putting in best efforts, and they have some level of influence and control over themselves and what they do. But we also know they have no control over the outside environment, and things can change. Relationships with potential strategic partners can fade. Customers that initially were very happy are now dissatisfied for some reason. We know these things happen. If an entrepreneur has good investors, the investors will be willing to help solve problems. So it's important that if something is not going well, you share that information as soon as possible with us. That allows us to help solve the problem either through experience that we've had that can help plan on how to address it, potentially bringing in other people that we're aware of that could also assist. Maybe even it's getting a little bit more directly involved to talk to the customer, talk to the strategic partner to see if we can help, correct whatever has gone wrong. But the one thing you never want to do is delay the sharing of bad news, because that just makes it that much more difficult for us to help. And unfortunately, it's a human nature to not want to talk about the bad things, but you have to overcome that and share that information.
Yeah, because things can go south.
Things can. Really bad things can happen. There are times when, something you significantly counted on, a strategic partnership. I had this experience myself. I was working in one of my startups, and it was a semiconductor-based product, and we needed the partnership of a semiconductor company. And we had found that partnership and done a very nice deal with the company we're working with. And then in the middle of our process, that company got acquired. And the acquiring company had no interest in what we were doing. So all of a sudden, a very productive, very good partnership turned into, we don't want to do this anymore. And we not only had to address that ourselves, we had to share that with our investors and explain that the strategic semiconductor partner we had was no longer willing to participate. Things happen. We understand. Just make sure that you communicate that so we can help.
Yeah, I heard a few stories, when acquisitions happen that, things go a different way. What happened then?
Well, what happened then is we had to find another partner. So we spent, quite a bit of time trying to find, another company to work with us. And fortunately, we did. It took some time, and we had to adjust our plans and what we were spending our money on. And as it took longer, obviously the internal rate of return on the investment wasn't as good as we had hoped it would be, but we got through it. And it was partially due to the fact that we had some people in our network that were well enough connected in the semiconductor industry that they could make introductions for us and open doors to have conversations. We probably could have gotten there ourselves, but it would have taken longer, and that additional time might have made it very difficult for us to succeed.
Yeah, it can get very, very uncertain in those situations, and you have to keep a cool head to handle all of that.
Yeah, this is one of the characteristics, no matter how much panic is going on the inside, the one thing, especially as the leader of a company, is you cannot, indicate to the people under you that you're afraid or you're concerned. You are. We all realize that. But if that becomes, too overtly in your day-to-day and people see that you're stressed and that you're concerned, it puts them in the same position as well. And it can become very stressful and very difficult for them. And that additional pressure does not help solve the problem. The hope is, of course, is that between yourself, the people working with you, your network of investors, possibly an advisory group as well, that all working together, you can solve a problem. And in most cases, there's usually a way to figure out a path forward, even if it's a significant change in how you were planning on going forward with the business. The important thing is that you communicate.
Right, so entrepreneurs have to not see only as a business partner strictly, but let's say as a friend, I'm going to put it in quotes, because you're here to help them. You can be their guide in some difficult and uncertain situations, and you're basically their business advisor. So when a startup is, just starting, how do you help them, after the investment's being made? We talked about communication, but how do you navigate them through, through stormy waters to go the right way?
Yeah. Well, obviously, one of the things that helps tremendously in anyone's ability to do that is experience, mostly bad experience. And I've had a lot of bad experience.
Yeah, failure teaches you
Failure
a lot.
teaches far more than you'll ever learn in success. So you can recognize things that are looking familiar and know, hey, I've been down this road. This does not end well. Here's what we should be doing instead. Also, when you've had successes, that can help as well to be able to explain to someone, this is the process you go through to successfully, form the strategic partnership or negotiate this contract, or hire the new effective marketing person to replace the one that, for whatever reason, didn't achieve the results we wanted. And that kind of advice is useful. I will caution entrepreneurs as well. Be careful. We've talked about this before. Be careful who you bring in. Right, the investor you bring in, you want to be an asset to you, to be a resource, a mentor, an advisor, but you don't want them driving. You don't want them telling you what you should be doing and how you should be doing it, and who you should be working with and who you shouldn't, and other aspects of the business. That is really up to the CEO and the team to make those decisions. Investors that try to drive, that will meddle with the business, are not good investors. And I always advise people to avoid those and make sure you understand who you're working with by interviewing other companies that they've invested with. Find out what it's like to work with that investor and make sure that there's going to be a good fit, both in terms of how they like to work with their companies and the skill sets they can bring, and the fact that they're going to trust the team to do the right things and advise, not direct.
Yeah, you're not here to take the steering wheel. You're
Right.
here, let's say, to tell them, well, you have 3 different paths. This one brings this one brings this, and this one brings this. So, take everything into the equation and see, what's the best possible outcome.
Yeah, the best, investor, the best board member, the best member of an advisory team is the one that can clearly articulate, this is the situation you're in, these are the options you have, here are the pros and cons of each of these things, and even go too far and say, my recommendation is this, what should we, and then just simply leave it with, what should we do, which way do you want to go? You have to trust the entrepreneurs to do the right things. Otherwise, why did you give them the money in the first place? You should have just done it yourself, right? Yeah.
Right. Okay, so first, when somebody comes to you, they have an idea, they pitch to you, they have a business plan. After the investment has been made, you mentioned it before we started recording, there needs to be a proof of concept and, and then MVP. An MVP is, let's say, your starting point to, just developing the product further. Just finding things out, getting that minimal viable product to see what's functioning, what's not functioning. But it never ends there.
No, it doesn't. You're constantly learning as you're bringing products to market. One of the things I encourage people to do is interact with your customers often and early. This is one of the unfortunate mistakes that happen. People think, well, I know what the customer needs. You may know some of what the customer needs, but you don't know everything. And getting a piece of software or a service or whatever your product or service is delivered to the customer early will help you gather feedback on what's working, what's not, what they like, what they don't like, what they'd like to have that they don't have, what you have that they don't want or are not using. And all of that is important to get a good fit between the products and services that you're offering and what the customer really wants or needs. You have to be careful about, once again, letting the customer drive. You really should consider them very much a source of information and input, but once again, the decisions on what you're doing and what you're creating are yours, and you have to make sure that you keep control of what's going on. I've seen situations where an engagement with a customer ends up with someone going off and doing all kinds of additional features and functionality which they think are going to address the broader market, only to find out only that particular customer has, those needs, and others in the market that have those needs are very unique and difficult to find. Perspective is important. Having a diverse range of input is important. So getting an early product in the hands of multiple customers is something that you really should do as soon as you've got to the point where you know it delivers value, that it's reliable, and that the customer will be able to use it without too much difficulty. Those things are important. If you're missing one of those elements, you could actually do more harm than good than getting in the hands of a customer, because you can frustrate them, or they can feel that the work is of poor quality, or they can feel that they're not getting the value out of it that they need to, continue to use the product. So, each step along the path from concept to exiting a business has elements that have to be addressed properly, and each one of those is critical. Having people along with you that have done it before, either on your staff, on your advisory board, on your board of directors, or as investors, is important to the success of a company.
Have you ever had a case where, let's say, startup had a business plan and they had their buyer persona, what they wanted, and then when they developed an MVP, they discovered something else, and they had to change. Well, maybe not the product drastically, but in a big way.
Yeah, it does happen. I immediately can't think of anything that particularly comes to mind, but there are famous cases of people starting on a product development only to find out that some other aspect of what they're doing is of far more interest. The company Slack is a wonderful example. What started out as an internal tool turned out to be their main product, and what they were originally working on, I don't think ever saw the light of day. Part of it is recognizing that there's a greater opportunity, and that does happen sometimes when you interact with customers. In many cases, you discover things and make changes. Recently, one of our portfolio companies, it's a medical device company that you may be familiar with, learned that their single sensor model for doing the collection of data was good, but that in many, many cases, the customer wanted multiple sensors so they could compare information. They hadn't considered that as an essential feature or functionality, and quite frankly, hadn't given it a lot of thought. But once they engaged with the customers, they realized that they needed to modify both the hardware and the software so that it could take information from multiple sensors at the same time. Net result of that was a much better product, and for them, something that had much greater value, which would allow them to command a much higher price. So that was definitely a win in that type of situation. So those things occur, and there's always this need to balance, what you think is what the customer wants or needs, and the reality of the customer's true experience and environment and what they truly need. Like anything else, whether it's with investors or strategic partners or customers, the key thing is to communicate. And that means, listening and gathering information as much as sharing information, but realizing that you need to use that information to make your decisions in the best interest of what you believe is the right way to go forward. Do not let anybody else tell you this is what you should be doing with your company.
Yeah, because when we were talking right now, I remembered in our last episode we discussed, how startup founders can get overconfident with their products.
Yes,
it's usually ego, and that might lead the whole project to doom,
Yeah, I mean, one of the characteristics of any entrepreneur is the belief that they can do more, right? You don't become an entrepreneur, you don't go down this road unless you have a strong belief that you're capable of doing extraordinary things. It's necessary to have that type of characteristic in your personality. But it can go too far. It can go to the point where you believe that, no matter what you do or what that things are going to go well. And in some cases, the extreme cases, which we're all familiar with, for example, Theranos, right? That belief that you're capable of doing what truly is not possible can get you into a lot of trouble. So once again, balance is the way to manage that. A good entrepreneur, a good CEO, a good founder will surround himself with people that have perspective and experience and capabilities that can basically pull them down to earth occasionally, right? it's always good to have someone in the room who will take a counter opinion. One of the things that really bothers me is when I present a concept or an idea for something new to a group of people and no one disagrees with me. That makes me very nervous. I'd much rather have someone say, did you think about this? Did you think about that?
Yeah, critical thinking.
Critical thinking and perspective. What can go wrong? What might not be possible? What could happen that would cause this to become much more difficult for us? All important questions you should examine and take the time to logically and critically look at before making a decision to either start a company or even change direction later. So anyway, one of the many things that has to happen as an entrepreneur.
I just remember when you were talking, one of the things that always happens in startups is everybody's doing everything. And it can get quite messy. And I was thinking, have you had meetings where you wanted to know something, but the startup founder just actually, what I wanted to actually ask, they didn't set up processes, Of course, everybody's doing everything, but somebody missed something. So what I actually wanted to ask is one of the most important things just setting up processes when you get the investment, okay, you have a business plan. I know we talked about that, but you have to really be very well structured, very well organized to get things going.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you raise a round of funding to achieve, the next major milestone, there are constraints, right? You have a limited amount of time, you have only so much money, and you have access to only a certain number of resources. You need to make sure that you're using those efficiently and effectively, and that you are, measuring your progress and your performance and making sure that things that need to get done are getting done. There are many different ways to do that level of accountability. There are plenty of tools out there to help organize, projects and tasks and interactions with customers and that. For me, I've always recommended the best way to do that is make sure that everyone works very visibly, that everybody can see everyone else's work, that documents and code and marketing materials and sales materials, that all of that is available to the entire team and anybody can look at it. That generally has the effect of providing opportunity for people to say, hey, wait, this isn't right, or where's this that we thought we would have by now, and to collectively work together to identify where things may not be getting done or going off plan or aren't of the level of quality or completeness that we would generally expect. So it may not matter so much as to what tools and what specific processes you pick, but having the ability for everyone to see what's going on definitely allows for people to raise issues and then, of course, address them earlier rather than later. One of the worst things you can do is give someone a critical task, leave them alone for 3 weeks, only to find out that either what they've done doesn't meet the need or they're significantly behind.
Yeah, that's what
schedule.
I actually wanted to ask.
Yeah. I mean, keeping track of what you're doing and keep working visibly is important. Working to a schedule is important. And the sooner you can realize that something is not going the way it should be, the more time you have to figure out, okay, how do we address this? Is it, we bring them in some help? Do we reduce the scope of what's going on so it can be done in less time with less effort? Do we have the wrong person? Maybe this person was not the right person for this job and we need to make a change. Or maybe we need to bring in outside, a professional consultant to help with that. By keeping track of what you're supposed to be doing and monitoring your progress on those things, it just makes it so much easier to realize when something is not going the way it should, and then you have the time to find a solution to that problem. You don't want your engineers locking themselves away in their cubicles, working hours on end without talking to each other. You don't want the marketing team not talking to the sales team. Communication and visible, performance of your work is one of the best ways to ensure that things will likely go as best that they can.
Yeah, it has to be a functioning ecosystem. Mm-hmm. All right. So you also have, except being a business advisor, you have a background in software engineering.
Yeah.
And you also serve as a tech advisor sometimes, or help people, startup founders, make critical decisions. On one of our previous episodes, we had Luciana. She's from Argentina. She's now in London. She opened a company. She's a lawyer. And her partner opened a company, pretty much like Zoho Sign, DocuSign, just signing documents. And she mentioned when I asked her, what tech stack did you use? She just said, well, a friend of mine recommended, using this technology. And she mentioned, well, now come to think of it, it would have been good if you had a tech advisor. And there's where you can jump in.
Yeah, I mean, some decisions you make are critical. One of them is, what technological platform and what tools and what frameworks am I going to work in? And they're not easy decisions because there are a lot of factors that affect those choices. Do the tools or the tech stack or whatever it is I'm looking at have the full set of features, functionality, capacity, and performance and quality that will meet my needs? Can I find developers and engineers that are familiar with these particular tools so that I have a wide choice of people that I can bring in? Or if I have to interact with strategic partners and others, will they be familiar with the technology stack that I'm working? What's the life expectancy of these technologies? Every technology has a lifespan. You want to pick something that is not in decline. Software can last a very long time. One of the clients I have has a piece of software they've been running for 40 years. The ability to support this software has been so compromised over this time because the environment, the tools, the knowledge have all faded away. And now they're stuck in a situation where they continually have to support something that's very difficult to support. You may not have to plan for 40 years, but you should be planning for at least a decade on the technologies you pick, and be sure that you've selected something that is likely, to be around at least that long in your technology stack. Costs also come into play. Some tools can be very expensive, and you have to be careful to evaluate those and say, if I purchase this tool or subscribe to this tool in today's world, will I get enough value out of it to justify the expense? And do I have the budget and the time and the other constraints are such that I do have enough time to learn the tool and properly deploy it within the environment so I can successfully get the value out of it? There's a lot of choices there, and it's a choice that once these things are made and you start down this road, it's very difficult to change. So I would absolutely recommend that anyone who doesn't have the necessary depth and breadth of the technical experience find someone who does, preferably more than someone who does, and that you examine those choices very carefully, taking into account the factors that matter, and make your best decision.
Yeah, because both cost you time and money.
Yeah.
And startups don't have a lot of money, to throw around.
You don't have money and you don't have time, and to have to start over, even a month of time can have a significant impact on your ability to deliver. And it has other impacts. If you pick the wrong set of tools and the wrong platforms and you have to make that change, everybody suffers. The engineering team has to work harder. The sales and marketing team have to reposition their materials. The investors know that you've now reduced the amount of time and the amount of money that you have to complete the work. So potentially the venture's at risk. So decisions early on about technology platforms, coding languages, libraries, how software will interface with other software, many other factors have to be well considered. And once again, having outside advisors that have done that type of work in the past can significantly help you avoid making big mistakes.
I think it's a quite common case, getting the right technology. I mentioned Luciana, and she also mentioned, we would have saved time and money if we had a tech advisor from the beginning. Mm-hmm. And a couple of days ago, I had a recording with Will. He has a company, it's called Basket. It's pretty much a shopping cart, it pulls different data from different pages. And he also said, if we had, a tech advisor immediately from the beginning, we would have made, less mistakes with that.
I've seen it. I mean, several of the companies I'm working with. I could give you some examples without naming names. I have one that is now on their third iteration of a platform. The first one they did, they found it didn't scale properly. The second one they did, they found they couldn't find enough developers to support the particular platform and code base that they had chosen. So now they're on to a third implementation. Literally the same product recast 3 times. Tremendous expense, tremendous loss of time. The confidence from the customers has gone down significantly. It's a very bad thing to have happen, and it was generally avoidable. Had they spent the time up front to consider what they wanted to do. Now, I will say there are some times when you can do something that's a throwaway to be re-engineered later. Sometimes it's more important that you get something quickly into the hands of a customer, but it may not have the necessary robustness in the back end. It may not scale. It may not have some of the other characteristics, but you use that to get the early interaction with the customer, get their feedback, and then design what will eventually become the final product that goes to market. That technique can be useful in a lot of cases, but in some cases it's not. The other thing that a tech advisor can do for you, and I saw this once again in another company I'm working with, is help you ensure that you're properly budgeting and allocating resources. I had a group that was claiming they were going to scale this application to multiple millions of users, and their entire cost that they had estimated for running the technology infrastructure was less than $2,000 a month. There is no way that that was going to happen. And until I pointed out to them that that was unrealistic, they had no idea that that wasn't sufficient. They just made up a number and said, that sounds like enough to me. And we're running with that.
Wow.
Yeah. And it does happen. So once again, having advisors, and not only in technology, but in finance, in human resources, in sales, marketing, company operations. As much as possible, surround yourself with people that have great degrees of experience and knowledge and expertise that can help guide you. Your chances of success become much, much greater.
Yeah, it's easier if you have help at the beginning.
It's easier if you have help the whole way through. But
I mean,
absolutely at the beginning it's critical.
And I'm not going to make a sales pitch, but that's what we do here at Decode. We have because our founders realized that. What I wanted to say, we have a lot of clients that come to us, and some of them have been working on a project for 3 or 4 months, and they're using a completely wrong tech stack. That's why we like to do here. What we like to do here at companies have product discovery workshop. We have our solutions architect, this guy with over 20 years of experience, who's going to tell you, look, you're going to use this. You're not going to use this because you might or might not scale the app or your software.
Yeah.
And it's so much easier, to have somebody that's going to help you just guide you through the whole process and estimate, and we're talking about here both time and money, because it's always the case, somebody's going to make you an offer. Okay, I can build this for, let's say, $30K. Somebody is going to say, we can build it for $60K. Okay, well, this is a cheaper option, so I'm going to go with that. But, in the end, it's going to turn out something completely different.
The false assumption is that the two offers are equivalent, right? That which I'm going to get by spending $60,000 and what I'm going to get by spending $30,000 is going to produce the same result. Clearly, that is not true. Aspects of the richness of the feature functionality, the robustness of the code to handle situations where you end up with resource exhaust or a network disconnect or things like that. The appearance of it, and the ease of use, and how the user interacts with the user interface, the experience they have, these things can be tremendously different from group to group to group as far as how they develop software. And it's really more about how much value am I receiving for the money that I'm spending. That's where the focus should be, not I have to figure out how to do this as cheaply as possible. Whenever I hear that in a meeting, whether it's about hiring a developer or outsourcing marketing or bringing in an accountant, if the driving factor is I need to pay as little as possible for this, I get very nervous, because in most cases that is the least effective approach to getting something done. It's got to be balanced, the value being delivered for the money you're spending, and it has to meet, at least the minimum level of quality and standards that you've said, or you're wasting your time and money again.
Yeah, you mentioned that, your technology tech stack is connected to your marketing and sales. Our chief delivery officer at our company, I talked to him a couple of days ago, and he mentioned, I think almost 10 years ago, they had a client that built a messaging app, and all of a sudden the client decided, to shovel money into marketing. And all of a sudden they had a big, surge in users, and the app just crashed.
Yeah.
And because of the scalability.
Yeah.
So those are also the dangers.
Yeah, obviously some of that stuff, testing is one of the things that sometimes gets ignored. The whole quality process gets downplayed sometimes. If you're planning on building an app that's going to scale to 1 million simultaneous users, figure out a way to simulate 1 million or 2 or 5 million simultaneous users, through automation and other techniques to see how the platform responds. It could be properly engineered and designed, but have some minor configuration issue or some problem with the auto scaling that needs to be addressed. You want to find that out in your labs, not out in your customer environment.
Yeah, because I mentioned the guy that made the basket app, and I asked him the question, what happened when it was, holidays, Black Friday.
Right.
I asked him, did your app crash? And he said, no, we were careful about marketing, we didn't go, big. We're still testing everything out, and everything went smoothly. We had a big, influx of users, but everything went smoothly.
Yeah, that's a wonderful example of a company working together as a, integrated team. With having the sales marketing people communicating with the engineering staff and the operational staff to understand what the product can and cannot do is very important. Rogue salespeople, rogue marketing people, promising customers, stuff that, isn't done yet, may not even be on the roadmap, or making claims about, the results that the software will produce that are far in excess of what it's actually capable of, are not things that you want to have happen. Yeah, and setting unrealistic expectations like that, even if you deliver a good product, can cause the customer to be unhappy. Where had they been set reasonably, maybe even below what the product was truly capable of, their perspective and their mindset and their reaction to the product would be completely different and far more favorable. Once again, this is a mistake that many people make, is that they feel that they have to overinflate or overpromise what they're capable of doing to get the business. It's simply not true. Figure out what the customer's basic needs are, deliver those in a high quality, easy to use, reliable system, and then explore the other things later. They'll be there. They'll want to continue working with you, to continue to use your products, because you started to develop that trust. Tell me a whole bunch of things that it's going to do, and then fall short of that, and now you've damaged the relationship. That really should be avoided.
Be careful. Yeah, always be careful.
Be realistic.
Yeah, be realistic.
Be honest. Yeah, be honest and be realistic. Customers appreciate that. No one likes being, sold a story and then being delivered something that doesn't meet that story. So.
Right. So you also you have Neoterra Capital. That's an investment company. How do you work with vendors? What qualities are you looking for? With, again, and I'm gonna make a sales pitch, but with companies such as Decode.
Yeah. Well, any company really. There are lots of factors that affect selection of a vendor. Some of which, of course, obviously are the quality of the work they do, their history, whether or not they have a large number of previous clients that are willing to talk about what a great job they do. Those are some of the initial factors, I look for. Other things can include, are they focused in the particular vertical markets that we need expertise in? That means that they'll have a much quicker and much easier understanding of the work that needs to be done, and actually can also make suggestions based on their previous experience of what can be done to include in a product or in a service to make it more attractive to a customer. Very much like the relationship between the entrepreneur and the investor, you want that open communication. I love working with a company where I can go see what's going on. I can see the work in progress. I can see the schedules. I can see, what's going on. So that transparency and that visibility is very much important as well. Communication, we talked about that earlier. The fact that you're kept informed and you can easily have a dialogue about issues that are arising or perhaps changes that need to be made either for technical or marketing reasons. And having a partner that you can easily communicate with who understands why you have to do what you do is very important. I've worked with software companies that some of them will take a very minimal specification, go away for a month and come back with something, and it's not what you wanted, it's not what you expected. And it didn't occur to them that they might not be doing what you actually wanted or needed. Obviously, those are to be avoided. One of the things I do like about Decode is how open the communication is and how willing they are to have discussions about any aspect about what's going on and make adjustments as necessary.
Yeah, what you just mentioned, that, the company, makes a specification, goes away for a month. And I've heard that case quite a lot, when I'm talking to our developers. They get a project, that was started 6-7 months ago. Mm-hmm. And since, the company founder is a non-tech person, he or she doesn't know what's happening. And I've heard a lot of stories. Well, they didn't tell them anything really for a couple of months. What's happening? Well, this feature is going to take a little bit longer, and this. And I've heard stories. Then they said, okay, can you give me the documentation, specifications, so I can read what's happening? They say, those guys didn't do anything for months.
Yeah.
For months.
Yeah. There are many times when I like I said, I'm working with an organization right now that's literally on their third iteration of software. And if you were to look back and see, okay, why did these others fail? It was a combination of not communicating the true need, not understanding what the customer wanted, and not, planning for what the future path of that software would be. And those are things that a good software development and engineering firm will raise. They'll want to know the answers to those questions so that when they're designing and developing the underlying technology, it'll scale and perform and survive through the arc of the growth of the company and not be something that has to be reworked because it was poorly chosen or poorly implemented or because the developers truly didn't understand the nature of the features and functionality that the customer needed.
I think we pretty much covered everything today. I don't know if there's anything that you'd like to add. Or...
Well, you know me, I'll talk all day. So happy to talk about anything else you'd like to, but maybe we'll save that for another episode, huh?
All right, just to wrap everything up, your closing thoughts.
Well, like I said, the important thing between investors and the entrepreneur is to keep that dialogue going after the investment has been made, that you keep the investors informed as to the activities that are going on, the challenges you're facing, and the good things that are happening so they can use that information to help you, either by suggesting courses of action, making introductions to potential strategic partners, potential hires, maybe other advisors that could help them. And, in the case of something going wrong, knowing about it as soon as possible so they can help figure out a solution. The relationship between the investor and the entrepreneur has to be one of open communication and mutual support toward the goal. It never should be adversarial. And quite frankly, the last thing I want to do is make an investment in a company and then just never hear anything from them after that. That is a sure sign that things are not going to go well. So keep that communication and that dialogue open. I think of anything we've talked about today when it comes to the relationship between the investor and the entrepreneur, that's the key thing. Make sure you're sharing information, talking about the things that you're struggling with or need help with so that everyone can pitch in and find the solution and bring the resources necessary so that you have a better chance of success.
Yes, pretty much what I got from our conversation today is be transparent and realistic.
Realistic, yeah.
Yeah, don't go, over the top with things because they're going to go south then.
Yeah, I mean, the attitude really is one of optimistic realism. You have to be positive about the future. I mean, otherwise you don't have the drive and the inspiration to achieve it. But yes, you have to stay as close as possible to understanding the reality of the world you're operating in. If you get that wrong, what you do will cause something to happen in the real world that is not what you expect. So the better you understand, the reality of your customers, the technologies, time and money, your people, the more likely you are to be able to construct a path through it that results in a good outcome.
Chris, thank you very much. Thanks for being here in person. This certainly means a lot to us. I hope the rest of your trips goes well, and see you next time here.
Oh yeah, I would love to come back again at some time in the future. I mean, like I said, the people here at Decode have been wonderful. Zagreb in Croatia is a beautiful place. So hopefully soon we'll be able to do another one of these in person.
All right, thank you, bye.
You're welcome.